Okay, so going back to the conversation with Romeo Mathis, in what ways did you invest into the people around you or your community?
I didn't invest in the community. I mean, you spending money at restaurants, tipping big. We invested in the community. I guess if strip was a part of the community. I lived in the strip club, so to speak.
Yeah.
I really did. I was at the strip club every day. Used to go in the daytime just because I didn't really like the crowd. But we went in the daytime and the nighttime. We was going all the time. We was blowing money fast. It's real. And, it is what it is. If I had that type of money now, I certainly wouldn't spend it the way I spent it then. I regret, where I say I don't like the regret, but if I could have did things differently, I would have invested in real estate. I would have invested in assets, but I wasn't investing in assets. I was investing in liabilities.
Okay.
Yeah, good point.
Do you have anything to piggyback on that, GP?
I think there's a lot of people that if you're not directly involved, you don't really know what's going on and how the system works, right? And when I think of Romeo, I remember him telling us about how like they had it with walkie-talkies and they had a whole system, right? And hearing you talk about it, having a whole system, and I think what I see from doing this podcast is learning more about this RICO Act and more about conspiracy. And I think if you don't know what that means, like it would blow your mind learning. Like I'm seeing these stories on this podcast, and I'm like, yo, that guy had life in prison for a $20 piece of cocaine. Right. So what could you tell people about this RICO Act? What could you tell people about conspiracy for if you're you've stumbled across In and Out, and how it impacts all of these people's lives, including your own?
Yeah, it was a catch-all phrase or a catch-all law that enabled law enforcement to bring a charge and convict and sentence people at a dizzying rate. So because of the sophistication of many different drug organizations, it was sort of basically loosely like organized crime. As a matter of fact, the RICO Act was actually created because of organized crime, because a lot of times you would have people like myself that really didn't touch it. Like when I said that, we had organization, I mean, before we got into the tractor trailers, we had just a team of females that would go out to California and they would bring it back on suitcases on planes. And then, you had the Unabomber, which kind of, for people that don't know about the Unabomber, it was actually a domestic terrorism in the United States. But that changed the game with the airlines. So then people had to start showing their actual ID. They kind of tightened up the airlines. So then we started moving to other different type of methods, which I had mentioned became the tractor trailer. So I would say when you had people that was making a lot of money in drugs or other type of illicit activities that they was doing, you would have people that was probably at the top of the food chain. The government would call us like a kingpin or a leader organizer. We never really touched. It never really touched my hands, because I had people that was flying out there. Then I would have people that would meet them, that would get the luggage. Then I had drivers, and I had, we would just give people hundreds of pounds, and then they would make it disappear. Then they would bring the paper back. So we had people that would get the paper out there. We had all of that, so it was kind of hard for the government to actually catch you with the marijuana. And so they came out with these laws really in order to be able to bring indictments against organized crime bosses. But then with the 94 crime bill, and even a little before that with the 1987 SRA, which is the Sentencing Reform Act, that gave them the tools with the advent of the conspiracy law to be able to come after people and charge them even if they didn't actually catch them red-handed. So the conspiracy just literally said, if two or more people come together and there's a meeting of the minds in order to do something illegal, then there goes the conspiracy, right? So then they didn't actually have to catch you red-handed. All they had to do was get somebody outside of you to say that this person came together with you in order to commit a crime. And that there was a meeting of the minds and that you decided that you was going to do some type of illicit activity. And so it just gave them broad and far-reaching tools to be able to charge people. And it was devastating. You know, people hear about, oh, you can't bring hearsay into the court of law until you find out, but there's an exception to hearsay. The exception to hearsay came about with the conspiracy law. And so there's just so many different things that people heard about growing up or seeing on Perry Mason or seeing on TV or reading about and thinking that the government cannot do this. The government was just about able to do anything and everything in order to be able to gain a conviction in the court of law. And then you start hearing about the exception to the hearsay and then an exception to the hearsay. So they had 1,000 different gadgets in their toolbox that they can use to get you. And then it enabled them also to give you more time than the sentence actually called for. We call it stretching you out, particularly if you decided to exercise your constitutional right and take your case to trial. If you lost the trial, they were going to punish you severely by putting on these sentencing enhancements, which would make the sentence far longer than you ever thought that you can get. And in many cases, it will give people 20 and 30 years and even life sentences. And it also took away parole out of the federal system. And, they was able to sentence over 5,000 people. At one point in time, were in federal prison with a life sentence for nonviolence drug offenses.
So I imagine they would try to catch up a lot of people on those things, right? A lot of people got caught up.
Everyone. Decades. I mean, everyone got caught up. If you caught a drug sentence from 1987 and then 1980, 1994 until now, because it's still in effect, you was falling up underneath that crime bill and you were going to get your head knocked off. It put in place mandatory minimums where people with literally a teaspoonful or a capful of drugs were able to get mandatory minimums of 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years in life without the possibility of parole.
So do you think during this time there was like an uptick in plea deals?
It was amazing. Over 90% of the people in the federal system were convicted on a plea deal because people wouldn't dare take it to trial because they knew that the sentence was going to be severe. They call them draconian sentences, which actually date all the way back to England when they gave these draconian sentences, which are extremely harsh, devastatingly long sentences that would devastate families, individuals, generations, communities across the United States of America. And, the disheartening thing about it was it was being meted out to mainly and disproportionately and discriminately to communities of color and poor people.
So something that Romeo mentioned in his interview, which is a perspective that we hadn't heard before, was what does it mean when you're taking a plea deal? Can you explain, what are people signing up for when they actually accept a plea deal from the government?
They're giving away their right to appeal. They're basically they're pleading guilty. A lot of times it may not. Listen, in a lot of cases, most cases, I would dare to say, people that plead guilty were guilty. Most cases, overwhelming, of doing something. I'm not sitting here and trying to convince people that people had not been doing something wrong. However, in so many cases, people didn't really know what they were signing up to. And most of the time in drug cases, people were committing drugs. I mean, they were committing the crime of selling drugs as a financial resource. Most of the time, they were from poor communities of color, not highly educated, and they felt that they had no other choice but to sell drugs. Most times, people were from broken homes, overwhelmingly, and they were trying to just do better for their families, for their children, for their loved ones. So often the case, people were pleading guilty, but they were pleading out because the alternative, in most cases, it was just unfair. The government was hitting them
Sentences.
Unbelievable sentences, football numbers. The government was essentially telling them, listen, take this unreasonable sentence or we're going to end your life as you know it.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they gave a threat. This threat was long-standing and far-reaching that they would tell people many, many times, your son or your daughter or your child is going to be grown when you get out.
So, something that Romeo said was how even after you've completed your sentencing under a plea deal, right? You're in like a lifetime contract with the government. They can pull you back at any moment to help them on other things.
That happens when you sign up for substantial assistance, cooperation, AKA snitching. And listen,
Were you offered a similar deal?
I was.
Did you understand what it would have meant if you would have accepted that deal?
I understood, but I came from a time, well, listen, I'm old school, you know, and not even to say I'm old school. I am old school, which I say old school because we didn't necessarily, you hear that old school didn't necessarily believe in snitching, but actually I take that back because so many people were snitching back then. It was crazy. It was like it was the style. It was like it was the thing to do. However, just where I was from and the way I was raised, you know, I just didn't believe in it. So I understood it, but I did take my case to trial, you know, and honestly, listen, this is going to sound crazy. You know, listen, I don't condone snitching. I don't condone cooperating, but I understand it. You know, and the vitriol that I had at the time for people that cooperate, I've softened my stance, so to speak, because I have friends who have cooperated, and I understand now more so than then that when people cooperate, they're just, you know, it is a weakness, but sometimes no man can withstand the pressure that the federal government puts on them. In most cases, people just trying to get home to their family. And a lot of times they got their family that's pressuring them, telling them, listen, you need to do what you need to do to get home. And when you get in there and you see how many people did cooperate, you start questioning whether or not you made the right decision because everybody in there cooperated. And then you in there and you seeing that the people that you didn't tell on told on you, and they going home to their children, and your children are growing up without their father. Yo, it's deep. You know, the federal government knows what they're doing and they don't play.
So one thing that you talk about right now is getting home to your family, right? And I want to segue that into how Romeo, he's one of our guests that hasn't been home all that long, right? I think most of the time our guests have been out for quite a while. Romeo, I think it was like 2 years or something,
yes.
Right? And he's gotten into feeding homeless people, right? So I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, hey,
I did too.
He's right to making an impact.
Right.
So what I'd like to know from you is a two-part question. One, what did you do to make an impact first? And second, what is the advice that you would give to somebody who's a returning citizen, how they can make an impact and assimilate back to society?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a good question. I appreciate it. What did I do first? You know, in an informal way, when I came home, anyone I knew that was still hustling, and I was doing it when I was still in prison, to be honest with you, but I can tell you people don't receive it. And I'm going to get to exactly what I was doing. I was trying to tell as many people as I knew that might have still been hustling. You just have a want to tell everyone, yo, it ain't what you think. Like you can get caught up at the drop of a hat, at the snap of a fingers. And I know this to be a fact because it was the same case for me. Most people hustling do not truly understand. They don't have an inkling. They have no idea what they can get themselves caught up in. They just don't believe it. They know they can get arrested, but they don't understand how the federal government can stretch them out. Most people don't know. So I would try and just warn others, but most people don't want to hear it. You know, most of the time they're like, listen, yo, you just got caught. We don't want to hear that. They might not say that, but that's the attitude that they had.
And they're getting money.
And they get money. They don't want to hear it. So I had to kind of come off of that. But one of the things that I did, as you know, as I teamed up with the United States Attorney's Office, I was given a platform by Sally Yates. And, so the most unlikeliest partners that one would think, because as I explained earlier, I didn't believe in talking to police. They came to me with a plea, and I was like, nah, I ain't even talking to y'all. They came to me through my attorney, and they told me, think about your family, and I told them to go to hell. Basically, I wasn't talking to police. I wasn't talking to no U.S. attorneys. I wasn't talking to nobody. They wasn't getting nothing out of me. And so I say that it was the most unlikely partners because I partnered with the United States Attorney's Office and partnered with law enforcement when I came home in order to make an impact on others, because I wanted to go directly into the prisons and jails. I wanted to go into the high schools and speak to at-risk youth, and I went into the universities to the future lawmakers, because I just felt like once I was given that opportunity, that's where I could make a difference. Because I knew that if there was someone that would hear me, because I know that, I'm talking to him and I'm speaking from experience. Like I'm telling y'all, I was out here before and I was doing it, and I was doing it on a high level. And I really was. And I was letting them know they never caught me with not even enough to roll up one marijuana joint or a marijuana cigarette. And yet and still, they still managed to give me 151 months because I thought I could beat it. So I was just simply trying to let people know, this ain't what you're looking for. And this ain't what you think. So that was one of the ways, that was the first thing, one of the first things that I did in order to make a difference. And I became so active in my children's life because one thing I know, or one thing that I feel absolutely positive in, one thing that I absolutely believe in is that the biggest way that we can make a difference is what we can control in our lives. And by control, what I mean is spending the time with the people that are closest to me, that are around me. And that started with my children and my wife. So I try and make an impact on the people that I'm closest to first, one person at a time. And then that just extends outward. And by talking today on this platform that I've created, the In and Out podcast, and by having people or inviting people on to be able to share their stories, I believe I'm making an impact by doing what we're doing. And you all are making an impact by being part of it. So everyone that comes on the In and Out podcast and shares their story has the ability to reach someone else and make an impact. And I believe it's important.
Cool.
Oh, that was a wrap it up.
All right.
That was a perfect wrap up.
That's what's up. And so we're going to continue to make an impact. And you all are making an impact by tuning in and listening to us. And if you want to help us make an impact, you have to like, comment, subscribe. You have to do it, and you have to tell a friend. You have to promote us. You have to send this podcast or anything that you see with In and Out. You have to send it to others. You have to share it. You have to like, comment, subscribe. Like, comment, subscribe. Continue to support us. We appreciate you, every single one of you. We are looking out, and we are sharing this story for the unheard voices, the unloved, the ones that feel that they don't have a voice. We're giving you a voice. So continue to check us out. You know where to find us. INNOUT with Eric Geralt. INNOUTWW. In and Out Worldwide with Eric Geralt. Continue to check us out wherever you get your podcast, wherever you check out your social media. We're going to be there. Continue to tune in. We appreciate you. And now we're out. Peace.